More than 110,000 people have gathered in central London for this so-called Unite the Kingdom protest, organised by the far-right activist Tommy Robinson, real name Stephen Yaxley Lennon. I didn't realise that he was apparently advised to change his name when he founded the English Defence League, because his real name exposes his Irish roots. It's an interesting bit of trivia for you. But there were several things about this rally today that inspired the question that I'm going to ask you. The fact that the death of Charlie Kirk was used to mobilise greater crowds to come today. That Steve Bannon was one of the speakers. Elon Musk calling for the dissolution of Parliament via videolink. Jordan Peterson was also listed on the lineup, but I don't think that he showed in the end. But on X, throughout the week, many of the MAGA faithful were apparently discussing their plans to travel from the US to the UK for this rally. And Tommy Robinson as well has increasingly pivoted towards a kind of Christian nationalist position. And that's been noted particularly since he was released from his latest prison sentence. And it was framed as a free speech festival, which is ironic in many ways when you consider, and it's a story that we'll look at later, what has happened to some of the people who have perceived to have had the wrong reaction to Charlie Kirk's death over in the US. And it's something that I'm sure Charlie Kirk, as a proponent of free speech himself, would not have endorsed. But all of this feels like pure MAGA to me. The British public are becoming increasingly polarised, but a lot of it seems to be happening along the lines of culture wars which have been imported from the US. So I want to know from you, do you think, are we becoming the 51st state? And if so, how do you feel about that? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. You can text 84850 or send a comment to LBC via your Alexa. There is so much Trumpiness about Nigel Farage. This is, and I could use this to describe either man, a wealthy man backed by various lobby groups who presents himself as a kind of grassroots campaigner on the side of the common man, despite actually being on the side of big business. And thought of as a fringe figure, despite having wall-to-wall coverage, both Trump and Farage thought of as fringe figures. And a lot of the people who support them appear to have selective hearing. They don't believe that they will do the things that they say they will do. Like, for example, I pointed out on Instagram this week that Farage is on record saying that he wants to relax gun crime laws, which terrifies me when you consider that there have been 54 school shootings and more than 300 mass shootings in the US in 2025. That should really terrify all of us. And the number of comments I got in response going, well, you shouldn't pay attention to him on that. It's immigration. We want to hear from him on immigration. And I'm like, okay, but what about the rest of what he says? And it's very Trumpy. It's exactly the way that people responded to Donald Trump. They went, well, he won't do that. He'll just do the things that I like. And there's something cult-like about both of their followings, I think. And that's, I think, explains why so many reform supporters express incredulity when I criticise Starmer, because they go, well, why are you criticising somebody who I think is left-wing when you're left-wing? Well, you're allowed to do that when you're not in a cult. You're allowed to criticise the leader of the party that people expect you to support. And that's what's really worrying me, that we're becoming MAGA-like as a country in some of our views about things, and that our culture wars are imported from the US when our culture here in the UK is very, very different. And I want to know if you share my concerns. 0345 6060 973. A bit later on, we're going to be joined by Joe Draper, who's LBC's reporter, and he attended the rally today, so he can give us a bit more of a kind of on-the-ground feel for what it was like. But before we speak to him, we're joined now by Professor Andrew Blick, who is a professor of politics and contemporary history at King's College London and co-director of the Centre for British Democracy. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Is it fair, do you think, to draw a parallel between the Democrats being very disappointing in the US, so people just knee-jerk voting for what they thought represented change and going for Trump, and Starmer's performance here in the UK explaining the rise of reform?
I think you can certainly draw that parallel. We can certainly say that a decline in the more traditional parties is taking place, certainly in the UK. We're seeing this. We're seeing both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party suffering historically low poll ratings at the same time. And we're seeing a arriving party, a newish party, breaking through in a way really we haven't seen in 100 years in the UK. I think that's definitely true. I also think, as you said in the introductory piece, we need to think carefully about how far we're being manipulated by forces from the US that are attempting to bring some of their culture wars, if you want to call them that, across to the UK. And of course, there are people in the UK who are very happy to try and import bits of them. So I think the international context is really important. I think you should also probably think about the fact that it's not just the US and the UK where these kind of things are going on. And if we look, for instance, at the activities of Elon Musk, he's been pushing this kind of thing, not just in the UK, but also in Germany as well. So this is actually, in a way, I'm saying it's even worse than what you're saying. You know, it's happening in many places, including in countries like the US, like the UK, like Germany, like France, for example, that were once regarded as stable democracies. So it's happening everywhere. So in that sense, it's not just about stuff coming from the US. And some of what's going on in the US came from, for example, ideas from Hungary and the Viktor Orban regime there. And dare I say it, even some things coming from Russia.
And is there a material difference in terms of what would be considered to be an ideal outcome for British politics in what is coming out of Russia and what is coming out of America right now?
So what a difference in terms of how we would respond to it? I mean, I think there are...
I mean, it would... do you think that Putin would be as pleased as Trump would be if Nigel Farage was to become our next Prime Minister?
I think Putin likes to see disruption. I think he'd like to see, for example, the vote to leave the European Union. I'm not saying he's the sole cause of it. I think there are many factors going on there, and it's very hard to know how good the Russians really are at interfering. But certainly, a lot of things have happened in the world recently that I think Putin would like. And disruption, instability, extremism in the UK, I'm sure is one of them.
In terms of how Keir Starmer should respond to all of this, I was listening actually to my colleague Ali Miraj earlier, and lots of people were calling in saying he's not listening to us on immigration. And I thought, wow, what does he have to do? You know, he gave that Island of Strangers speech. He's made it clear that immigration is a priority for his government. They've released all of this social media messaging talking about asylum seekers and how they won't receive a warm welcome here in the UK. What could Keir Starmer possibly do to stop the rise of the far right in Britain, or is there nothing?
I think since fairly early stages in Keir Starmer's leadership, so before he became Prime Minister, his strategy has been to try and neutralise these kind of forces, very hostile anti-immigration, anti-asylum seeker forces, coming from the Conservative Party, also coming from Reform, coming from other areas, by adopting a diluted form of their own rhetoric and saying we are going to deliver on, we accept that these things are a problem and we're the answer to them. And rather than challenge the underlying premise of what they're saying and actually make the case that we do need immigration in this country, if only for economic reasons, and also make the case that the rights of refugees are important, they're not willing to do that. They judge that that's politically too dangerous to do. So they've taken the line, which you just referred to, of actually trying to say, don't worry, we're hostile to immigrants too. We're going to sort out this supposed problem. I think so far, whether one likes that approach or not, so far it clearly isn't working. And I think there's evidence to suggest it's having the opposite effect and legitimising those arguments. And if you really like that kind of thing, if you really like politicians being tough, supposedly being hostile towards immigration, why would you go to the Labour Party to get that when there's other people offering the undiluted version?
And as we've been speaking, somebody has texted in and said, why is Elon Musk pushing such divisions? What's in it for him?
I can't see inside the mind of Elon Musk or know exactly what's going on, but for what it's worth, I think maybe he does agree with some of these ideas, which is hard to countenance, but maybe he does. Maybe he likes feeling important. He's fallen out with the president in the US, as we know, very, very publicly, and maybe this is his way back into political relevance. He's certainly, I don't think, really helping the brand of the commercial activities he's associated with by doing this. So I don't think he could be accused of doing it for publicity for his products.
Jo Draper, thank you so much. Oh, sorry, and Professor Andrew Blick. Got excited and ahead of myself because Jo Draper is with us in the studio. The voice you just heard was Professor Andrew Blick, Professor of Politics and Contemporary History at King's College London. In the studio with me is Jo Draper, who is LBC's reporter. You attended the Unite the Kingdom rally today. The first thing I'm curious about is the name of it, because if you said to me there's going to be a Unite the Kingdom rally, I would assume that would have something to do with not wanting Scotland to leave.
Well, yeah, I mean, interestingly, there was a huge Scottish presence, Welsh people as well. So it was very much described as an event for all people of all backgrounds, as long as they describe themselves, I guess, as British. But even then, people from right across the world joined. I spoke to people from New Zealand, people from Australia, people from America. So it's been described and it's very much been promoted as an international event, really. And it did shape out to be. And
if there was one unifying belief or something that was written on the majority of the banners that you saw, what was it that was bringing all of these people together?
Free speech was a big issue. That was one of the big issues that kept coming up. They feel like their views are being sidelined, that they can't speak their mind on particular issues, particularly on migration. And that was another big issue today as well. They feel like the numbers of immigration, particularly illegal migration, is too high. Then there were some more unsavoury views, and these are the views that have been criticised as being Islamophobic, describing Islam as a threat to Western culture, to British culture. Now, that is the kind of view that has prompted the Met Police to say Muslim Londoners are welcome here in London today. There has been a concern that they will feel unsafe because of that kind of rhetoric.
And what would you describe the mood as? I know that Tommy Robinson did call for people not to be violent, not to escalate tensions. However, we've also heard reports that the anti-racism counter-protest is currently being kettled in central London. So how would you describe the mood?
In Whitehall, largely peaceful. There were lots of people drinking alcohol, getting very passionate, very rowdy. Where I was, I didn't see any violence. However, the mood now on London streets is changing. We've already started to see violent clashes between the police, between the protesters, as you say, in Trafalgar Square, not far from here, trying to get to those counter-protesters. They've been essentially hemmed in. Now, I would like to play you a clip from a witness there who's just been describing to us what he's seeing.
Tommy Robinson supporters have effectively kettled the Stand Up to Racism demonstration. There's still about 5,000 to 6,000 people here. Kettled it in Whitehall. They've surrounded every exit in Whitehall. It's been going on for several hours. The police say they have no ability to make the fascists move back. And so for several hours, thousands of people have been kept in Whitehall, unable to move, unable to exit.
Now, that's just around the corner from here. Clearly, a quickly developing situation. Sounds pretty terrifying for the people involved as well. We are now hearing police are effectively trying to create a safe channel or a route to get those counter-protesters out of the area, but they've been struggling to do that for hours. As I said, there have been clashes already today. Potentially, this could get a lot worse into this evening. And we know that there have been police reinforcements on horseback sent into the area.
What about the experience of the police? I heard some reports earlier that there were projectiles being thrown at police officers.
Yeah, I mean, it must be terrifying for them. They've experienced what they describe as significant aggression from those Tommy Robinson protesters and are continue to experiencing that as we speak. Those protesters are trying to break through those police lines to get to those counter-protesters. Clearly, for a minority here, there's one thing on their mind, and that is violence.
Jo Draper, thank you so much for your time this evening.